So are spreadsheets dead? Why is it problematic that some advisors are still presenting with them?
Well, spreadsheets have been one of those interesting things, a fantastic utility that I even use today. I think most of us are using Excel or Sheets in some capacity to take data and make it more manageable. In financial advice, there's a lot of advisors that still do a good amount of their work in spreadsheets. And of course, the biggest challenge has always been compliance and what does a compliance organization allow to get out there, whether that is approved or whether that is, we'll call it off limits for presentation. I think that's the really big nuance in financial advice. This is a fantastic tool that helps us do math and helps us break down mathematical concepts, certainly behind the scenes. But as a presentation tool, it's really is lacking, not only from the visual aspect, but also from the compliance approval aspect. And most of us in advice can't put a spreadsheet that we create in the back office in front of the client. We probably wouldn't want to, because the reality is that most of our consumers are looking for summary conclusion or confidence or insight, not necessarily to see all the math, right? Now, there's always the exceptions of that are classic engineers that want to see all the math and break it down with you. In fact, they probably send us the spreadsheet in the first place, right? So here's all my expenses, here's my accounts, here's what I did, here's my performance, and here's how I track it in spreadsheets. But I don't think that spreadsheets are dead at all in our business. I think they just need to be relegated to the back office as opposed to the front office. And as most of us in advice are constantly trying to figure out a way to communicate with our clients to help them understand that we are interpreting the complexity, or if we're doing modeling on the side that needs an Excel or some kind of spreadsheet function, that we're gonna take the conclusions of that and put it in front of a client in a way that's also compliant and appropriate for them. So one of the things that we've been thinking a lot about at AssetMap is how does a financial professional take that complexity and make it consumable in a way that's both compliant and also going to be easy to do. Scalable presentation has been something that's been challenging for the longest time in our business because all financial professionals have their own approach, niche, as well as style of how they want to present. And it's why many of us have customized our own materials for years. Some of us getting it compliance approved, some of us perhaps not. And I think the important part of that is that as we all think about this word scale, that means replicating a process that has a low marginal cost so that we can capture the best marginal return on that effort. In other words, from a business standpoint, it makes sense to scale an experience. It means we're going to have to create some standards. And with respect to Excel, even though that has to remain very much in the back end, for us at AssetMap, we've been thinking, gosh, if I can just help you frame the conversation to bring in the context of that Excel spreadsheet or math that you've done on the side, that's going to help the consumer. And it's also going to meet the requirements of compliance departments, SEC regulation, et cetera. Our target map modeling, which is our calculation model for figuring out if you're on track for major goals, or signals, which tend to look at, can you handle mathematical calamities if they were to happen yesterday, right? Like loss of life or liquidity issues or disability. Those are all Excel-based models so that an advisor can understand how we're coming up with the math. And that's an important aspect for most of us who are delivering financial advice, because if we're called on the carpet by our client to say, well, how did you come up with this number? We need to be able to justify that. And that means the math needs to be broken down into an Excel component so I can say, okay, this is how that confidently comes up with math, especially if I'm putting my name behind it. And I'm telling you this is an issue and mathematically it's a problem. So the reason why Excel has lasted so long is because it gives advisors like us the flexibility to actually break down a mathematical concept. But again, it becomes really difficult to communicate it. So I really encourage advisors to check out our target map model because it was really predicated on this idea that I need to take an Excel and make it consumable. Tell me what it means. Very much like a doctor who says, well, I think you've got a problem. And the client says, well, where is the problem? The problem is right here. Let's look at the x-ray. I'll show you it's right here. Your knee hurts because of this little spot here. You wouldn't have noticed it, but I can explain to you where it is and why it's a problem so that there's also a technical relevance that I'm competent in giving you this advice to back it up. And so that's effectively how we've come up with all of our modeling that's still in AssetMap, is that it's got to be defensible by an advisor, but also presentable so that the client knows the bottom line is, okay, you need to save $800 a month and figure out a way to lift your overall return to 5% net of fees. Those are the two things we can take away from this analysis.